The modern world. Cold War and Globalization. 1945. Present. After World War II, the global landscape changed dramatically. The second half of the 20th century was dominated by the Cold War, a tense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Even as many countries began to rebuild and newly independent nations emerged from colonial rule, tremendous technological progress occurred. We entered the space age and the information age, and efforts were made to improve human rights worldwide. Let's walk through these developments. The Cold War, 1947, 1991. Shortly after WWI, the alliance between the Western powers, like the USA, UK, and the Soviet Union broke down due to ideological differences. The United States and its allies believed in democracy and capitalism, free markets, while the Soviet Union spread communism, a system where the government controls the economy and there is one-party rule. Each side feared and distrusted the other. Although the US and Soviet Union never directly fought each other, partly because both had nuclear weapons, which made direct war too dangerous, they engaged in an intense arms race and space race, and they supported opposite sides in conflicts around the world, so-called proxy wars. Key features of the Cold War. Arms race. Both superpowers built thousands of nuclear weapons. By the 1950s, both had the atomic bomb. The Soviets developed their first in 1949, and more powerful hydrogen bombs. This created a situation of mutually assured destruction. MAD. If one side launched nukes, the other would too, so both would be destroyed. This fear actually prevented direct war. The superpowers also built huge conventional, non-nuclear militaries. Space race. The competition extended to space exploration. The Soviets launched the first satellite, Sputnik, in 1957, and in 1961 Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. The United States responded with its own space program, and in 1969, American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon. Armstrong's words: "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." This achievement was a bright spot showing how competition fueled scientific progress. Alliances. The world divided into blocks. The US and Western democracies formed NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in 1949, a military alliance. The Soviet Union and its Eastern European satellite states formed the Warsaw Pact in 1955. Europe was literally divided by the Iron Curtain, Eastern Europe under Soviet influence and Western Europe free. Proxy wars. The Cold War turned hot in places like Korea, 1953, where North Korea, communist, fought South Korea, supported by UN, US, ending in a stalemate, and the division of Korea at the DMZ and Vietnam, where communist North Vietnam fought South Vietnam, the US heavily involved in the 1960s. But the war ended in 1975, with a communist victory in a unified Vietnam. In the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, the world came very close to nuclear war when the Soviets placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, near U.S. shores. After a tense standoff, they agreed to remove them, a relief for everyone. Life during Cold War. People lived with the fear of nuclear war in the background. Children in American schools even had duck and cover drills. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union and the West competed for influence in newly independent countries. In Asia, Africa, Latin America, sometimes supporting opposite sides in local conflicts. Decolonization. After WWI, European colonial empires collapsed. Many countries in Asia and Africa gained independence between the 1940s and 1970s. For example, India became independent from Britain in 1947 and was partitioned into India and Pakistan. Over a dozen African nations became free around 1960, sometimes called the Year of Africa. Independence was often achieved peacefully through negotiations, but sometimes through long struggles or wars. Algeria's independence from France in 1962 came after a brutal war. Kenya's independence came after the Mau Mau uprising. One notable figure is Mahatma Gandhi, who pioneered nonviolent resistance in India against British rule. Another is Nelson Mandela in South Africa, who fought against apartheid, a system of racial segregation. Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years and released in 1909. Apartheid ended in the early 1990s, and Mandela became South Africa's first black president in 1994. Civil rights and human rights. The post-war era saw greater attention to human rights. In 1948, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, setting out basic rights all people should have, like freedom, equality, and the right to education and asylum. In the United States, the Civil Rights Movement, 1950s, 1960s, worked to end racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. advocated nonviolent protest. Important steps included the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed segregation and protected voting rights. Similar movements for equality took place elsewhere and for other groups. Women's rights movements gained momentum. Women achieved voting rights in more and more countries, and by the late 20th century, women increasingly entered politics, business, and professions. In Britain, for example, Margaret Thatcher became the first female prime minister in 1979, and in Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became Africa's first elected female head of state in 2006. Technology boom. The second half of the 20th century saw astonishing technological progress. Medicine, vaccines, and antibiotics, like penicillin, became widespread, saving millions of lives. Smallpox was eradicated worldwide by 1980. New medical imaging, like X-rays, MRIs, improved diagnostics. Computers. The first electronic computers were built in the 1940s, e.g., the ENIAC in 1945. They were huge machines then, but by the 1970s and 1980s, microprocessors led to personal computers. In 1981, IBM released the IBM PC. In 1984, Apple introduced the Macintosh. By the 1990s, computers were common in offices and many homes. Internet. Originally developed as a network, ARPANET. In the late 1960s for researchers, it expanded. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1990, which made it easy to navigate the internet and create websites. By mid-1990s, the internet started to dramatically transform communication, business, and access to information. Transportation. Jet airplanes, first commercial jets in the 1950s, made global travel fast. Humans also continued exploring space. Space stations like the International Space Station, ISS, allow astronauts to live in orbit for months. We've sent probes to other planets and even beyond our solar system. Everyday tech. Many inventions changed daily life. Microwave ovens for quick cooking. Television. Spreading news and entertainment. First black and white, then color TVs, now streaming via internet, mobile phones. The first cell phones in the 1980s were bulky. Now smartphones are powerful mini-computers. Globalization. As technology connected people, the world's economies and cultures became more linked. This process is called globalization. After the Cold War, trade expanded and organizations like the World Trade Organization, 1995, formed to reduce trade barriers. Many products you buy might have parts from multiple countries. People, ideas, and culture also cross borders more easily. For example, someone in Brazil can eat American fast food and watch Korean pop music videos online. English became a global lingua franca, common language, in business and science, though Mandarin Chinese actually has more native speakers. End of the Cold War. The Cold War ended around 1989. 1991. The Soviet Union had been struggling economically and politically. In the 1980s, leader Mikhail Gorbachev introduced reforms, glasnost equals openness, and perestroika equals restructuring to fix the system. But these reforms unleashed demands for more freedom. In 1989, the Berlin Wall, which had divided communist East Berlin from West Berlin since 1961, was torn down by crowds. This symbolized the end of the division of Europe. In 1991, the Soviet Union itself broke apart into 15 independent countries: Russia, Ukraine, etc. Cold War was over. The United States emerged as the sole superpower, but the world soon became more multipolar with rising economies like China and a united Europe. Challenges and conflicts after 1990. Even with the Cold War over, peace was not universal. In the 1990s, there were conflicts such as the Gulf War, 1990-91, when a coalition led by the U.S. pushed Iraq's invasion out of Kuwait. There were tragic civil wars, genocides, like in Rwanda, 1994, and in the Balkans, Yugoslavia broke apart in the 1990s, leading to war in Bosnia, Kosovo, etc. Entering the 21st century, terrorism became a major concern. On September 11, 2001, 9/11, terrorists from a group called Al-Qaeda hijacked airplanes and attacked the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing about 30 people. This led the U.S. to launch a war on terror. The U.S. and allies invaded Afghanistan in 2000 and won to oust the Taliban regime that sheltered Al-Qaeda. In 2003, the U.S. and a coalition invaded Iraq, claiming that Iraq had dangerous weapons, which were never found. These wars lasted many years. Afghanistan's war only ended in 2021 with the U.S. withdrawal, and the Taliban returned to power. Global cooperation. There have also been efforts for global cooperation. The European Union, EU, was formed as an economic and political union, making Europe more integrated, with many countries sharing a common currency, the euro, since 1999. International agreements tried to tackle problems like climate change. Scientists warned that burning fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases like CO2, which trap heat and cause global warming, changing Earth's climate. This issue became more prominent by the late 20th century. In 2015, most nations signed the Paris Agreement to reduce emissions. Human rights progress. Over time, more countries embraced democracy, especially after the Cold War. Many Eastern European nations transitioned from communism to democracy. However, some places still remain under authoritarian governments. Socially, there has been progress. For example, more recognition of women's rights and minority rights. The fight against racism continues. Movements like Black Lives Matter, started in the 2010s, highlight ongoing issues. Attitudes toward things like marriage equality have shifted in many places. Same-sex marriage is now legal in many countries, reflecting greater acceptance of LGBTQIA rights. The 21st century, technology and connections. The early 21st century has seen explosive growth in digital technology. The internet is now used by billions of people. Social media platforms connect us, for better or worse, across the globe instantly. A message or video can go viral worldwide in minutes. Smartphones give people access to information and communication anywhere. New technologies like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, like solar panels and wind turbines to combat climate change. Biotechnology, e.g., gene editing tools like CRISPR, and more, are emerging rapidly. These bring great promise, like curing diseases or generating clean energy, but also raise ethical and practical questions. Global issues today. Humanity has achieved incredible things. We have gone to the moon, eradicated some diseases, and connected the world. But we also face big challenges. Now, for a handy review, let's look at a timeline of some major events in our journey.